Hey listeners, this is Jay. I got some exciting news to share. If you're interested in reaching out to other professionals or highlighting your product, well, this is for you. We are offering a variety of sponsorship opportunities for future podcasts, as well as the upcoming 2025 National Parks and Recreation Association Conference that's taking place in Orlando. Reach out to us at recklesspod@gmail.com if you're interested. Make sure you follow us on social media, keep up with all the news and updated episodes, and hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to Season 4 of RecLess, the podcast expanding your knowledge and making you smarter about the field of parks and recreation. Your hosts are Shane Mize, Jay Tryon, and Tom Venniro, three career-long friends from around the country, bringing insights, industry stories, and a surprise guest each episode. Thanks for swinging by. We're glad you're here. This is RecLess.
Yo, what's up?
What's going on, my man?
Trying to get through this week.
True Mardi Gras original.
Dude, your son getting MVP. That's really cool.
That was a lot of fun, yeah.
What's up, Tomas?
What's up, guys?
I was talking to Jay about his son getting MVP.
Nice. Congrats.
So he's going to be a nightmare to play poker with. Now he's going to have a big old trophy in the view the whole time he's playing. It's like, sorry, I can't hear you. There's this big trophy in the way.
Talking about flag football MVP?
Yeah, as well. 7-on-7?
7-on-7.
Nice.
Don't call it flag.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Different season, different sport.
They tackle in this 7-on-7?
They do. They do.
I mean,
they have
it's not
contact.
tackle, but they definitely contact more than flag because they get tossed around and they don't really flag it.
What is it? It's not full pads, though, right?
No, there's no pads. I mean, it's two-hand.
Do they wear the
touch, but
headgear?
like,
Do they have to wear the
It's not-
protective stuff?
It's
Okay.
not required. We have played in some tournaments do require it, but it's not that common.
Oh, yeah.
I wish Noah would wear it more.
Well, congrats to Noah. Hopefully Hannah keeps part of this in on his MVP. I don't want to hear about it next time we're all playing poker. Well, y'all ready? Y'all see we got a true Mardi Gras original.
We do.
It's exciting, huh? Okay. Oh, fuck. What episode is this? I don't even know.
76.
79.
76. Welcome to episode 76 of RecLess. Thank you, Tom, for the assist. That makes us season 4, believe it or not, episode 16. When will it end? That's the question y'all have. We get it probably soon. I've got my good buddies here, Tom and Jay. Tom, Jay, how are y'all?
Doing well.
Joke's on you. It's ending sooner with just you being here because Tom and I got our own side thing we're doing.
That's right.
We do.
I don't have the stamina to do this much
But
longer.
it doesn't, I mean, we've got a side thing, but he's Beyonce, so he's going to have his own solo act soon.
True story.
Destiny's Child. Yeah, whatever happened to the other two gals of Destiny's Child? Be careful.
I don't know.
I don't even know their names. Maybe our guest will. Maybe our guest could fill us in. But before we get to our
what'd you
awesome
just
guest, Monster?
Guess what I had today?
No way.
Monster.
Ooh, that's one I haven't had yet. Is it pretty good?
I was disappointed.
Yeah. You got to go with the pink. Not that pink, but this pink here.
This was a slim can.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Oh, okay.
Everyone's been worried about my 16-ounce Monster, so I've been doing the 12. So I just drink more of the 12. I don't know how that helps anything, but but now that we've covered Monster and before we get to our guest, I want to do our entry question. And I think this will be interesting. I don't know if we've ever covered this topic in any real depth, but it'll be interesting to see what y'all think. So the question is, coming off the backs of our 3 rules discussion, will be interesting because I am one that doesn't like to hyper focus on their weaknesses, and Jay is one that has no regrets. So it'll be interesting to see where this question pings in between those in some way. But this isn't about a weakness and this isn't about a regret. If there was something you could just, with the flip of a switch, change about yourself, maybe it's physical appearance, maybe it's some sort of skill, musical ability, singing, cooking, whatever, or something in leadership or some other dynamic. If you had that opportunity, that genie in a bottle, that whatever it would be that you could just, boom, and make the switch, what would it be? And I'll let y'all think about it while I go first.
Can
For
we
me,
can we offer suggestions of what we would change about the other two individuals?
that might even be more fun. Screw what I would
We
change.
might-
I want to hear what
We
y'all
might be here for a while.
this would be a therapy session
Can we
really
all,
quick.
do we all have to only pick one?
Next week.
We might have to bring our person back to facilitate this conversation. So our guests could just all of a sudden, we're not asking them questions anymore. They're just facilitating our therapy session. I love it. For me, I don't think everyone always completely grasps it. And I haven't been diagnosed this by anything, but I have read into it and looked it up. And I have some sort of social anxiety. And how that plays out is I'm at times unresponsive. I'm at times aloof. I think about my wife, who, as we talked about last week, her father passed away. She was in Cisco most of last week with family. They all stayed together. This week she's up. Her sisters and her are very close. She's staying with one sister. She's going to concerts with another sister. She's staying with Becca, Esther, both Becca and Esther fans of the show. And Esther's been driving back in and started screenshotting. She was behind. She was on episode 12, but she screenshot when we said we were going to do RecLess in Europe on the Katie DuPont episode. And she was like, let's go, because Esther's always been the one that wants me to go to Europe with them. And so, she's up there this week, and Hannah will call me. And there are times that most of the time I'm terrible at talking on the phone. And very few times I go to the level of excitement that Hannah wants for me when she calls me on the phone. I don't know if y'all are the same way with your significant others, but I don't just see it in those moments. Tom, you and I, when we were in Oklahoma, met Kyle Marks, an incredible young park and rec professional who is really doing some cool things in his agency. And every time he emails me, it takes me a month. Now, Tom probably takes him an hour to respond. And he created this really cool Monster, Fueled by Monster logo, put the PF in front of the word fuel. And it still took me 3 weeks to respond to him. And I have since responded and apologized. But whether it's emails, text messages, over the years, y'all have just gotten used to me. And y'all will say, Shane won't respond for a week, and then he'll just thumbs up or something. And I've appreciated that my best friends, the guys I went to school with, the guys that were at our wedding, the guys that I've started this podcast with, those types of folks realize I'm not someone that pokes out a lot. I'm not the one that says, hey, what's going on? I respond, but I'm not one that starts a lot of conversation. And y'all have, at some point over years, just learned to deal with the disappointment that is that part of the relationship with me. But if I could change it, I would. And Stacy Anaya said last week 2 weeks ago, she talks about how she can be 50,000 feet and then dive right down. I don't know if I can't. Like, if I'm so high up in the clouds, I get a text. Trista Taylor, Bryce King send me texts. They're great texts. Meredith will send me texts. It takes me sometimes a week or more to respond. And I don't know if it's because I've read it and then I've thought about it and how I want to respond. I don't know if I'm trying to figure out how I can respond that is enough for them, but also doesn't prone like 4 more conversations, because then I just feel like it'll take me that much longer to respond back. I know it sounds terrible to hear that or articulate that. I wish I could change it. Jeff, my AD, has this photo the week that he came onto our team was the state conference. And he had a photo of all of us at this karaoke bar. And I don't know, there's 300 plus park and rec professionals having the time of their life. And I'm 15 feet away from everyone, just staring into the abyss, like just, shocked. And so there's something about me that needs to step away. There's something about me that doesn't respond immediately. There's something, I wouldn't say it's paralyzing, but it's definitely exhausting in the sense that I see a text, I see an email, even from my boss. My city manager will send stuff, and my boss who has had incredible grace with me over the years and is understanding, will say, did you see that text from Serena? You really do need to respond, because I'll sit on something, I'll think about it for a while, and people want responses quicker than I'm comfortable responding. And so I wouldn't want to be taller or faster or a better singer, but I would love, as someone that doesn't focus on their weaknesses, I don't think I could fix this if I could, but if I could wave a magic wand, I would be better in social situations for sure. It's funny, Katie, y'all were great. You two and Katie, reached out to Hannah last week when her father passed away, and y'all sent us some beautiful flowers and a gift card to our favorite taco shop. First of all, the downstream effect of that is Katie reached out to me and found out now where we live. For 15 years, I've successfully kept my address hidden from her. She now knows, because the flowers had to be delivered. She called
That
the
was
taco shop, talked to Bianca, and told Bianca about this stupid podcast. And Bianca is this incredible lady that we have a great relationship with, and her husband works in the parks department. Only sees me as the aloof guy that comes in, says two words to her, tries to be very nice or friendly, but doesn't engage in a lot of conversation. And I walked in, she was like, "You have a podcast? That's the craziest thing. You talk to people." And then a couple days later, I saw her walking in our park system with her husband who works for me. They were listening to our podcast. So it's like, God, it's even worse. I think if I could, that would be the wand I would wave. And I would love to hear y'all's.
Yeah. First of all, you're welcome. I've had your address for quite some time now, and I'm just going to be very upfront. When we started the conversations, I was ready to do all of this and that. And Katie, being the type of person she is, she's like, let me deal with the flowers. Let me deal
Yep.
with this. And so I was like, all right, if you want to be the lead in that. And she goes, I just, I need one thing. I need his address. How do we get that? I go, don't you worry about that. I've got it. I've got that address. And she was excited. So I would not count out anything
Oh,
out of
yeah.
the,
Glitter bombs are coming.
little special coming your way somewhat soon.
I've once
Shane,
wanted my address and birthday from y'all for a long time, and now they all know both. I hate my life, and I'm gonna have to find a new set of friends. It's terrible, but that's what's gonna have to happen.
yeah. So and then I'll just go with my answer to that question, Shane. You and I are very similar in that way, and we had the conversation at the national conference. It's hard for we talk about this with
And I think that
individuals.
surprises people to hear that.
Yeah, probably.
We speak
Probably.
and we go around and we do things. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I get drained fairly easily with obligation, and I don't know if this is the reason, but I want to say it has to do with the demand of our jobs.
Mhm.
So, unfortunately, we've talked about the work-life balance. I feel like I give so much to the job that I have yeah, I have some social anxiety when it comes to plans that are outside of that, and and I just want to relax, right? And it's very hard because you're constantly either obligation for the kids or you got family. And then of course we look at a conference like sure I enjoy it. I'm extremely excited when I get there and even from the moment I get back I'm
Mhm.
rejuvenated and re-energized. But when we get to, night 3, 4, or whatever it is, the speaking engagements are a little more tolerable because they're kind of short, quick hitters.
Mhm.
That national conference though, I mean, and so it's a long haul, right? And by that last night, we have talked to so many people and I still enjoy that. I still want to be, but I also feel a lot of fatigue. You know what I mean? I get fatigued pretty easily on that end of everything. So I get it. It's definitely something that I wish I could prove. And if I were to go a little more specific into it, I would say on the family side of things. So
Mhm.
you talked about Hannah, and I would say that I just we don't see our family lives here. We don't see them that often, and I think often that gets pushed aside where there's Jay would probably, and I don't want to put words in Jay's mouth, but I know Jay doesn't have that opportunity. He doesn't live with his family, right? And so who knows what that would be if he was in Buffalo or whatnot. But I am with my family and Melissa's family, and that's one thing I would like to change or try to improve on. I realize that time is fragile. Hannah's father passed, my father passed in recent years. The time is running out
Yeah.
to enjoy these individuals, and they're your family. You know what I mean? So for me, it's a little bit of what you had mentioned, and then going a little more specific into the amount of time that I give into work for the demands. And I have a kind of a fourth rule that I did not put as my one of my rules because I believe that I really don't know if I can conquer it in all aspects of life. But that rule is just show up. And so by that, when we give a session on professional development, part of that is just show up. If someone
Mhm.
invites you to a social afterwards and you're the social anxiety type or you're the individual who's a shut-in introvert and you want to shut off after a day of sessions in exhibit hall, that rule that I've adopted, at least professionally, is just show up because you're going to have a conversation with someone. And it might be Debbie from Baltimore, who I told was my neighbor. And we're 6 hours away. And Jay was there for that conversation. But we had a great conversation. And then 2 years later, we're Jay and I are presenting at the Maryland conference. Right. So it's that just show up piece. I think that I've done really well with that on a professional basis, but maybe personally, I wish I could change that and really hone in a little bit more, make the time.
What you got, Jay?
I can relate to several things you just talked about. From the family perspective, I obviously, you guys have talked about it. I've talked about it. I don't have family here in North Carolina. My wife and I have lived here. She went to college here, but we've been married now going on 16 years. The closest family is 8, 9 hours away. So, if I could change anything, that's definitely something we would love to both change, is have family closer. But I'm gonna go with something a little bit different from it's almost a work and family and just like overall mentality thing. And Tom, you mentioned it too, with some of the work of always being on and just like the demand is, I wish if I could have one thing I could change, I could turn my brain off. And what I mean by that is, it does not matter the time of the day. I'll think of something at 6 in the morning. I'll think of something at 10:30 at night, and it's typically work related. And I'm sending myself an email. I send myself probably 20 to 30 emails a day of just something I'm thinking of randomly. Remind myself to do this or do that. I wish I could turn my brain off for that, but I also wish I could slow my brain down, because sometimes, and I notice it when I'm either leading a meeting or maybe even presenting at a conference or presenting at even just like a staff training or something. I have so many things I'm trying to get out, and I'm just like, my brain just moves so fast sometimes that I can't even like keep up with it, with the words coming out of my mouth. So I end up talking faster, I'm moving faster, I'm doing things at a faster pace than I want to, that might be less impactful. So, and I kind of tell myself all the time, like, slow down, slow down, slow down. Doesn't really work, because I'm just got a lot of energy and trying to always get a lot done and, do what I want to do. But that's something that just comes to mind as we're talking about, changing something or maybe focusing on something that is in our control. And I know Shane said it's not in your control, to like what you said, but I mean, it can be. We can control what we want to control, just a matter of whether you want to. It takes more effort and more time for some things than others, but I think that would be mine, is just kind of slowing things down sometimes, to focusing on like completing a task at one time, or slowing it down and maybe making sure that, hey, what you're doing, in my comment of like the morning or evenings or just random thoughts, like, doesn't need to happen then and there, and just putting it to the wayside.
That was really interesting, because, I don't know if I thought y'all would go in that direction as well, but yeah, I agree. It'd be interesting to see some of our previous guest thoughts on that as well, because I think especially people that you don't know, but of in some industry, whether it's ours or another industry, and they have some sort of stature, or for some reason or another, you're listening to them. I think in a lot of ways they think we're bulletproof, infallible in some ways, and that's not the case at all. I think there's a lot of things that we would like to be able to correct or change, or wish there were things we did better. So, all right. Well, now we're bringing on a guest, and I'm excited about this guest. I haven't been excited about the others. I'll be honest. This is the only one I've ever been excited about, because we're making history.
I like it.
Gentlemen,
I like history.
We're making history for the first time, and probably the last, after they hear our dumb podcast.
They're not from Texas?
They're not from Texas. That is the first time. Also, in the YPN fam, Nate wore a Pflugerville shirt, so I had to wear my ES shirt, my Excelsior Spring shirt. So shout out to Nate Williams there. But for the first time in history, we have someone that is active. They are actively in a prestigious position, and we've never had this person from this group of individuals before. We did have someone that was a former one of those, but we've never had anyone active. Does that elicit any guesses already?
Yeah, I've got it. Yep.
Interesting. Cool. Hold on to it. Don't ruin it. Don't ruin it yet.
Yeah.
This may give us something away, because there's very few schools that can say this, but the school they went to for their undergrad and their master's, the whole time this person was there, that football team went undefeated. Just pretty rare. Okay. Also, they are a self-described quitter. They are all but dissertation for their Doctor of Education, and they quit because the agency they were working on, they had to basically make a decision between pursuing what it would take capacity-wise to finish out this dissertation or CAPRA accreditation. So they quit on their education to make sure their agency was elevated, which I wouldn't vote for, but whatever. Y'all know my thoughts on Capra. Any thoughts right now?
I got nothing.
No.
They've worked in my favorite city. I think y'all know my favorite city. It's the Mardi Gras theme, I think, might give it away as well. But they have at one time worked in my favorite city, and they know Jay very well. In fact, they've worked with Jay on some projects over the years. Man,
Super intrigued.
their department was recently split, and they were given the responsibility of parks, public works, events, and strategic initiatives. Our guest is an NRPA board director member and the executive director of public works for Mobile, Alabama, Shonnda Smith. There you go. What's
There
up?
we go.
Jay, I'm
So-
very disappointed. I am very
So-
disappointed. At certain
No,
points,
as
you were
well you
supposed to get
should.
this. I'm
As
very
well you should.
disappointed.
It
But
actually,
I'm, you know,
true story. When he said his favorite city, like your name came to my brain, but I don't ever like saying it unless I like really know.
I don't know
So-
if we're buying that right now, but the Alabama Tide thing, is that what we're talking about?
No.
No, that's not the undefeated. Okay.
She went to Long
First
Beach
of-
University. They
he's
didn't have a
being
football team.
he's being real ugly. He's being
come
real
on.
ugly, Tom. Yeah, he's being real
Come
ugly.
on.
The football team was undefeated the whole time she was
We didn't
there.
have we didn't have a football team no longer when I was there. No, just. Mm-mm.
Tricked me.
Well, welcome.
What's
This is
up?
Awesome.
So I'm gonna start off 4 seasons. And I'm just now getting invited.
You are.
Listen, she went at me hard and heavy when I brought her on too.
That's a great. You're right. You're right. You're on my list, but I guess that doesn't matter.
I
either,
may be
'cause
way down the list. That's
No.
what, okay, but I mean that's okay. That's
it's
all right.
alphabetical.
Yeah.
No, because you're gonna make
He had you as Shonda with one N, and so the email kept going to the
go
wrong
to some.
email address.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
Tom, who
awesome.
did you think this was? Because you said I got it. Like when
Oh,
he
I
said-
He was kidding
I
around.
was kidding. He gave me a clue that I'm like, come on. Yeah, I've got that off of that one clue you just gave.
So Neelay was a former board director, but we've never had a current
Yes.
board director on. So excited to have Shonda on. And I reached out to Shonda ahead of time, and because I've enjoyed it so far, asked her if she would do the 3 questions to kick us off, or the 3 simple rules. So,
Oh, nice.
Shonda, what's rule number 1 for success and
I
happiness?
start. So you guys had a very good conversation that I'm just very interested in your question that you asked and which I went through. But build and maintain relationships is important in the work that we do, but it's important in life. A lot of folks will meet people, but then don't call people until they need something. But the maintaining of the relationships are important. It's hard because I very much hear you, Shane and Tom
Yeah.
and Jay, about but it seemed like we maintain it when we see each other at the conference and then all the other things we're involved in. But in between that, because of those times we've met and spent time together, we know that I can call you if I need help, but don't need to talk to you every day. So building and maintaining relationships is number 1.
You know, before you go to number 2, that's interesting.
Yes.
I've never been the guy that just called and asked how you were doing. The small talk is at times been really
Right.
difficult for me. Just in my whole life, I think small talk's always been difficult for me. I have a really close buddy of mine that was in my wedding, and he's always understood it. And you know, we grew up together. Like there's photos of us as little kids together. But when he married his wife, it was tough for her. You know, and I remember she would say, you know, you can reach out to Matt more, you can call him more. You know, you don't just have to see him at some sort of sad event or some sort of reunion or something. And so I know from some people's perspectives, it looks like we're not reaching out because we're not trying to keep in touch. But I feel like some relationships, people are just, what I think happens a lot at conferences, you show up to a conference and things just pick up where they left off a year ago.
Yes.
But you're
Totally.
probably right that's just maintaining that relationship. If
That
you
is maintaining.
if you reached out once a quarter, you would be this much further along the next time you saw them. Yeah.
The annuals work, but then again, we serve on so many committees that also cross. So then I at least get to talk to you twice a year, some kind of way.
Like a program
Yeah.
committee, for example.
Exactly. My second one is people struggle with this, especially moving up. I say be a giraffe amongst the turtles.
Oh.
And I say that because you have folks that move their way up and they continue to see it from a very ground level. And you need more folks who have visionary views. And I mean, that's why folks, when you see people get promoted and move, that's why, because they're able to see the wider growth of things that are happening where they need to make a decision. It's hard though, because a lot of folks get promoted because of the work that they have done and not the visionary work that they're trying to do. They do their job really good. But then when they move up, it's like, all right, I need to pull your parachute. I need you to look at this like in a bigger view. So
And they have
I
trouble
need
with that.
A lot of
cool.
folks have struggles with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've not heard that saying before, but it makes a lot of sense. And I do can picture people struggling with that because their responsibilities change as you, get higher up. And sometimes you do forget, how you got to where you are or what's really valuable in some positions.
Right. And it's the step back. It's what you said, Jay. It's like you want to turn your brain off, but when you walk away, you're constantly thinking about all of the things that need to happen. And that's why you're in the position you're in. A lot of times, folks is thinking about what I need to get done next, and you're trying to think of the next 10 things that need to happen. So that's been my biggest thing, be the giraffe amongst the turtles. And number 3 is simple, but a lot of folks get caught, is do the work. And I say that because especially with this, folks are probably going to jump on me about this, but this new generation of folks that's coming in are ready to do everything right now. And it's like, no, you need to do a little bit more work. Or what you're trying to do is not going to stand. As I am, funny as we talk about program committee, I'm actually cleaning up my slides because I'm doing the top 10 tips on submitting a session, Jay. And one of the ones I put on there is have the experience. We have folks that want to come and talk about being a leader, and you're a rec leader and you're not over anyone and you've never managed anyone, but you are telling folks how to be a leader. And I'm like, you haven't done the work. And we're sitting in a session like, somebody stop them before they tell somebody the wrong advice. So be willing to do the work.
Yeah,
that's
I know
amazing.
We've had a lot of conversations around that at CPC meetings about just, looking at someone's experience and then looking at the topic. And sometimes it doesn't mesh.
Right.
Hannah and I were at our state conference, and this will shock no one on this call, but I got there late to a social. So everyone's already at the bar and most people are even sitting down, relaxing. And I come in and there was a big, hey, Shane. Shane's walked in, a big, hey, everybody to Shane, right?
Yeah, Beyonce.
Which I hated, right? And I walked through and said my hellos to everybody and sat next to Hannah. And I think a fantastic young professional, I think took some sort of offense to that. And ultimately, a little bit later, they got up and left. And when I asked them if they were leaving, they said, yeah, no one greeted me like that when I came in. And I said to them, that doesn't happen in 1 year. That's 20 years of relationships with people, talking to people, enjoying people in such a way that when I came in, they were excited to see me. It doesn't mean I am of any other value of anything else. It's just I hadn't been in the room. They were excited to see me. But you're right. I think there's a generation of folks that see something like that and man, I just want that as well, whatever that is, that title, that success, that adoration or whatever. And it's just not something that happens quickly. You can hack and jump to the front of some lines in life. You really can. You can. And in fact, I think potentially all of us on this call have leveraged different opportunities to jump ahead of people in our same peer set where they were about 5 years or 10 years or 15 years of age, or maybe had the same type of degrees. And all of a sudden we leapt to the head of that group because we used an academy externship or used a program committee to elevate our status potentially and our expanded our network. But there's some things you can't hack. And it's appreciation of the people that you've worked with for 15 or 20 years. That can't be hacked, you have to earn that in some ways. And some of the titles and some of the amounts of respect or stature or how people perceive us in the industry can't be hacked. Even if you've been incredible your first couple of years, it just means that you've been incredible for your first couple of years. The whole industry is waiting for you to continue that, and we're rooting for you, but you got to do that for 15 more years for us to have this level of respect or adoration for you versus this level,
Yeah, it's interesting. I love that last rule of do the work, put in the work and the time. And You had mentioned, Shonda, the younger generation. There's also a little bit of a cross section there where so I just was a part of a virtual session that was talking about multi-generational workplace, right? And what does that mean? And where you got the Gen Alphas coming in, right? And then you got baby boomers on the far extreme side. The work that they want to putting in the work is so different, right? The amount of work.
Yes.
So even think about it from that perspective. There was a survey that was done by, I think, Fortune, and it was these Gen Alphas that they talked to. What do they want to be? About 60-70% of them wanted to be content creators, YouTube creators, right? It's
Yes.
very individualistic. It's very creative. It's different
Yes.
work. But I could
Yes.
tell you from a personal experience that I've tried to dabble in TikTok and these types of things. There's work involved.
It is. It
It's
is.
just a different kind of work, right? And so it's so unique, and they make all of these connections, whether it's followers or comments, but they don't know these individuals, right? It's just
Mm-mm.
it's a very different it's a different world, right? That they're being brought up into, and it'll be interesting to see how that kind of shakes out, because there's other individuals that maybe we have departments where like, yeah, let's start a TikTok, let's join our social media into the TikTok world. And then they find out that we don't have the ability or capacity or time. I don't
To
know if
manage that.
I don't know if any of you have tried, but I mean, the
I
time
have.
that
It's
these
a lot.
people,
It's a lot.
yes, that they put into they don't have editors. Well, some of them do once they get the money and the sponsors, but the general individuals who think that they're going to get big on content creation, it's like it's singular work by themselves. It's
Yes.
time. It's
And it's
uh,
8-hour days for them. I've actually worked with some folks and they were telling me what it takes to do to keep. I was like, oh, okay.
yeah,
No, thank you.
Yeah.
No, but I would even say the do the work. So we're all at conferences. You see the young folks with the bright eyes and they're asking questions. And, I'm talking to some of them. They're like, I want to be a director. And I was like, have you been a supervisor? And
not
they're
yet.
like, well, no. And I'm
So how do you know?
like, what, yeah, what else have you met? What are you doing right now? And what they're doing right now? I was like, so let's talk about the steps that you need to be taking to get to a director, because you're not going to go from where you are to a director. Let's talk about how do you get the expansive knowledge of running a facility, a whole
Hmm.
department versus you run pools. And then now you think you want to go, like, you need to know maintenance, you need to know all of these different things. And so it's getting them to be aware of all of those things. And it's not I would say it's a part of number 3 instead of a 4, is just to get the knowledge. And that's what because a lot of folks is that's not my job. To become the director, everything needs to become your job, because
That's
you want
right.
to learn all of those things.
That's right.
And that's what I tell them. I'm like, well, have you, go spend time over in the maintenance. Oh, that's not my job. But you want to be a director, that does become your job. So it is getting folks out of a different mindset. But
Yeah,
yeah,
if you don't think that's your job, wait till you're standing in front of a city board or council and they start asking questions about that.
yes,
Because the 75,000 people I serve and that 7-person city council thinks everything's my
big
job.
is my job. Yep.
They'll
Even when
they'll
it
ask
really
yeah,
isn't.
they'll ask me at times. I mean, when you think about the list of fees you have, I mean, and I'm not talking about a rec center fee. I'm talking about a $2 farmers market fee or some random fee.
Hmm.
They'll ask you from the dais, Shane, how does this fee compare to another fee? You're like, whoa, so you
Yes.
find out I have grown in my capacity over the years of what I believe I should understand and have some sort of working knowledge of, as questions like that have happened to me at council meetings, or
Yeah.
even in high level leadership meetings. I
Yeah.
remember I had a former city manager point to me and say, what are rec centers going per square foot? It was my first year in Hutto. And I thought, wow, I didn't know I needed to know that. And I didn't know I
Yes.
needed to be able to recall that
Call it
at the point.
immediately.
Yeah, yeah. But let me tell you, I started looking every once or twice a month when a new rec center in Texas, a new restroom, a new sports complex would happen. I'd look at the overall square footage of that facility and the cost, and I would start writing down some numbers. And I would be pretty good. And when I got to Pflugerville and I was starting to talk about our need for a rec center, I could in some way start to articulate what it costs to do some of those things. And so it's interesting what you don't think's your job until someone points at you and says, "Hey,
Yes.
what's going on here?" Or what's going on with the chemical at the aquatic facility? And you cannot be an aquatic professional. You cannot be a chemical applicator, but you still have to be able to articulate what's going on. There was too much acid. And when you have too much acid, the pH balance goes in this way. You've got to be able to say some of that stuff. It is your job for sure.
Truly.
Yeah. When we went through what we all went through in 2020, a lot of departments either got, they had furloughs, they had whatever it might have been where they lost people in the workforce. So, I think what was common, and at least for us, a lot of our rec staff ended up going out into the parks. And so to that point, right, it's like, okay, now you understand, you got a little taste of it. And we talk about on our podcast a lot, we talk about with a lot of our guests and individuals of, hey, if you're going to go to a conference, okay, there's NRPA is a great example. You might have the opportunity to go to what? Is it maybe 12 sessions? I'm not sure what the total amount of session blocks are, but let's say it's 10 to 12. Are you going to 10 to 12 session topics that you're already doing? Are you going to a maintenance topic when you're a rec supervisor or whatever it is, just to get a little bit of perspective? Good example today. It was earlier this week. One of the vehicles in our fleet that transports citizens was a transmission line blew in their driveway, and so it was in a homeowners association. And so now the homeowners association's involved. The driveway's a mess. And so who do you think got the first phone call? I got the first phone call. And I'm like, oh, gosh. So what do? We went out on site. We did the evaluation, took the team out there. And then today, 3 days later, I went out. This is not what we needed, right? There's tournaments going on. There's events that we're prepping for. And this just happened. I went out on site. I helped the guys. I actually got there like just at the tail end where they were done cleaning. That was not by design. I
Director
promise.
jobs. You wrapped it all up. Good job.
Great job, everyone. I'm sorry about it. But I saw it. I saw what was going on. And I encouraged even some of the rec staff who it was a recreation service, right? But now our maintenance team is the one that have to come in and do the cleanup. Unfortunately, that's how it happens sometimes. But I invited some of the rec staff. I go, you might want to come and just see this. Like, these are the situations that pop up, right? And my follow-up question to what we just had that conversation is, how do you put young individuals in a position to grow?
Wow, very good question. And I think your answer does that with the story you're telling is just the exposure of getting someone to come out and come and see different things and to be sit at different tables. I actually just had he's not what I would call a young individual, but he's decided to go back to school to get his bachelor's in business administration, and he reached out to me. He actually is, because I do public works, he's a trash truck driver, and he said, I would like to see what other departments look like. And so what I did was did a 6-week, 1 day a week program and talked to his manager and like, hey, can you function without him for 1 day out of a week? And he said yes. And so each week I put him with a different department, and he got to sit in budget meetings, CIP meetings. He was in all of it. And I had him do a report at the end of like, what did you think about this? I gave him a standing applause, like his report of understanding budget now, understanding staffing. Because what he said was, now I understand why you look at me sideways, at us sideways when we ask for more money. And he broke it down in a way I couldn't even break it down. And he's now become an advocate out in the field because he's able to answer people questions. But his biggest thing was understanding how budget is a common talk that we have, and understanding just the leadership role of the balance I said of grace and discipline, right? Where somebody's doing something, how do you give them a little space for that? And how the higher up you go, you can't hold grudges. And he was able to sit in on a conversation that was open, that we talked about people's attitudes and behaviors. And he was like, how do you do all of this? And I was like, you got to love it. But I mean, he is like, the next time a supervisor role comes open, I'm applying. I think I'm ready. I'm excited. And so he is sharing this amongst other people, but it also let us see, like, we might need to do this to a couple of more people. How do we put this into a program that we bring people through to expose them to different stuff. So that was like an eye opener for me. I was like the mama bear. I'm like all excited and I'm like, oh wow, I'm like sending it out to the mayor so that I'm like, read this. And they was like, wow. They was like, what can we do with him? Like, what is happening? Because, it's exciting to see that someone can pick that up from these meetings and be able to articulate it in a way that you're like, I wouldn't have said it like that,
Yeah.
but exactly, that's it. So and then it becomes the time, right, Tom? Like, how do you shuffle more people through that and, say, hey, come ride with me? But I think the exposure is the biggest thing. I'll tell you in 2019, what was that? That was Maryland, wasn't it? The Baltimore conference in 2019? Baltimore. We
Yeah.
took our first group to a conference who had never been there, and they just was like, oh my goodness. And it was almost like what you said, Shane, because I've been going since Vegas. And so it is like a family reunion when we see each other. And so they came back like, Shonda know everybody. She
Mhm.
knows all she and I'm like, but it's us. We've been going. We know each other. So we're hugging and, you speaking to everybody as you go, but it's letting them see that, hey, this is bigger than Mobile. It's a lot happening. And these are true resources that people support you in.
That's a great
Yeah.
that all of that's great and great perspective from when you go to a conference and I've just had the opportunity to bring multiple individuals and now that's because of what they've seen, it's become a mainstay. So I would always encourage any of those departments out there, small, medium size,
Yes.
whatever it may be. If you're only going with one person, bring someone 1 year, just let them see the experience. And then of course, obviously budgetary becomes the challenge there,
Hmm.
but there's ways to justify. Going back to that experience that young individual had on your team. We've talked about this, Jay. I don't know if you were on the call, but the career choice group, the career task development group for the
Yeah.
academy, they talked about this idea of is there any way we could do a ride along and bring people? How do we get people to understand the profession? And then a couple local departments around my area, we've always toyed around with the idea is can we send one of our staff to a neighboring town for a day for a couple weeks and let them see what's going on there. The cross department piece that you mentioned, that I've never even thought of. That blows my mind. But when we talk about the working genius, we've talked about seek to understand others and how often do you have a
I'm on the
situation
call.
where there are individuals in another department who are complaining about one of the other departments and they have no idea what goes on in that department. But if maybe they just spent a little bit of time with that department, it
Well, and
might help
especially in
clarify.
Shonda's sense, because you're almost more like an ACM in a lot of ways than you are a director of any one department, because you have public works, parks,
Yeah.
Office of Strategic Initiatives and Events, city events, correct?
Yes,
So
I do.
how do you make events know what parks are going through and parks know what public works are going through and it's us versus them sometimes that we get when you're a Parks and Rec director, it's easy to hate on the public works director, but if you're over all four of them, you can't allow that, right? They
Yes.
all got to play in the same sandbox.
Yes. And I would say that the good thing is coming when I was a Parks and Rec director, I had a good relationship across the board of sharing that at the end of like we're front facing. So if you don't respond to us, everybody's about to be on CNN, just not me, because it's like we
Yeah.
are a group effort.
I'm
But I
bringing
think
you all down with me.
we all going on together. Come on up here. But I think the bigger part too is what really changed in Parks and Recreation is our visibility. And so when folks start seeing what we were doing, these are citizens as well. So they were like, I want to help make parks look better. I want to help do these different things. And so what we did was so I was a deputy before. So prior to me coming in to the executive director position, there was an umbrella of that included Bill Mobile, which is like your urban development, the public services, the parks and recreation, engineering, infrastructure. We were all under the same umbrella.
It
So
was a
we
huge
had
department
a huge
or
department.
division. Yeah.
So we had collective meetings talking about all of the things that we were doing, where we're having issues. And so it is, how do we, again, we live in this city, how do we make this better? So we had a hurricane where all the trees were down and parks people was like, well, we can't. I was like, why can't we cut tree? Like, how do we help clean up the city? And so we're like doing cross training. So now everybody's trained on how to use a all the saws and all of that stuff.
Chippers,
And
things like
the
that. Sure.
chaps. And yeah, let's all get out there because the quicker we clean this up, the better. So we have meetings monthly of like, what are your challenges? What needs to happen? What needs to move? And so everyone is very much on board. It is a good place to be, especially as I talk to other colleagues and see the struggle that they're having with folks supporting them within the city. So that I am proud to say that's not one of our issues.
John, I want to go into a topic that Shane mentioned earlier with the board of directors, just because I saw some pictures this past week. I think you all had a retreat in
Yes.
Chicago.
Yes.
And I am super intrigued with just the whole setup. And obviously, there's folks from all over the country that have a variety of different roles. Can you kind of give an oversight of like what the retreat was about and what is the role that you have on that board, and how does it all come together with such a wide variety of talent and experience?
That's a very good question. I'm going to say on the front end of that, I am very much learning. This is my first year, so my first meeting was actually in Atlanta, and so this is
Okay.
my second meeting, and just all of the information that you get, it's almost like we get the background information to be advocates for what NRPA is doing. So we just launched a new strategic plan in Atlanta. And so the goal is still pushing that information and sharing that across the board with our 6 areas, our goals that we're working on. Please do not ask me to name them. I'm gonna have to get my binder so that I can let me get my binder out so I'll be ready to answer that in case you ask that. Then it's budget time. So it's approving the budget and preparing for that. And to be very honest, we get federal funds for grants to support. And what does that look like if we don't get those funds with the budget cuts? There was just an email that went out today about cuts that are happening in different areas and how that may affect us if that comes down. And what is our pivot plan if that doesn't work that way, so that we can continue to provide the services we've been providing in previous years. I think it's a question that a lot of folks have, is like, how do you come up with alternative funding to pick that up? And so, membership is a thing, is how do we get people to understand membership? How do we get people to actually come to conferences? And how do we get people to and show up to these different spaces that makes a difference? But how do we get folks to understand the benefits that NRPA has to sign up? Because I will say this, as the state of Alabama, I'm not sure how many people are because the state involvement is small. So to me, that also means that the national involvement is low. So how do we get them to understand and share the benefits of being a part of the NRPA? But most importantly, I say as well, state, because if they're not doing state involvement, they're not going to do national involvement.
I want to follow up on that a little too. We'll probably never have another board of director on here again. I had to pull favors to get Shonnda on, but
if I was asked earlier than the fourth, but I guess I wouldn't matter then because I wasn't on the board, right? Okay, I got it.
That's all of a sudden. I was like, now
That's why
I'm
you're on
interested.
Now, okay.
So and I know it's only been a year or less, but what were you most surprised about that as a member, you didn't realize that we were doing, or that we had our hands in that pot, or that maybe we were just tracking it. Maybe it's something that we as an agency or an association are very aware of, that you were like, oh, what were you most surprised about?
I guess I would say the involvement of the board. I think we've all served on boards where you're on there, but you're really not making decisions. It's not conversations. And so I was like, oh, okay, we get to vote on this. So this is a conversation we get to have. So I think both Tom probably don't know me that well, but I'm not a performative person. So if you sat me somewhere, that must mean, I'm going to talk and my mouth I'm going to ask you questions. And so they are open to that, but also educating, because again, they expect us to be the voice. And so it's making sure that we understand this on many levels so that we can go out and share it. You get so many emails, you really don't read them. And so the advocacy part, I didn't know we were that involved in advocacy. So I didn't get to go this time to DC, and I sit on the advocacy committee, but actually paying attention now that we're out knocking on doors, showing up, pushing the envelope with folks on the advocacy side to speak on behalf of Parks and Recreation, was something that I was not I kind of knew it was happening, but I didn't know that we were being that intentional behind that.
And a follow-up to that, I don't know if everyone knows, but there's some matrix or mix between quote unquote Parks and Rec professionals in the essence that were city or municipality employees. And then they're like park adjacent people on this.
Yes.
There are people that work for nonprofits or alliances that we benefit from our connection with them. That I don't know if everyone understands that, but it's to elevate our overall exposure in this field that we're all trying to live in, this Parks and Rec space. What's that like? Is there any type of education we're trying to convince or get someone to understand when they work for a nonprofit or some sort of alliance or whatever, what a Park and Rec professional, because they're making decisions that will eventually, I imagine, of our 60,000 members or whatever, not 100% of them are municipality employees, but the large majority of them would be. And so they are hearing opportunities and ultimately making decisions on things that do downstream affect the majority of municipal employees. And so is there an opportunity to say, well, you got to understand what that looks like downstream to, because maybe they are a nonprofit or an advocacy person. Maybe they've never worked in our industry. And so they don't understand that you can't just go out and advocate for something you believe in, whether it's right or wrong. And so is there any conversations like that where you're talking about that's a great thing on paper, but there is some downstream impact to some of that?
We haven't this time, but I do believe as things come through, because again, reframing the way our DEI looks, right? It's been some rollout education about that, and it's folks is like, hey, why are we getting rid of that? And it's like, no, we're not getting rid of it. We're reforming the way this is being, because we are trying to embed this. Do it have to have the titles? Do it have to have, So again, it's how do you start to do that within your organization as well? So I think that's the first one I can think of, but not so much right now.
Gotcha.
It maybe just a kind of a prequel question to all of this is the NRPA board of directors in general is somewhat of there's like a demystification that a lot of people probably seek, right? In terms of you covered a little bit of what you've experienced so far and what's been surprising. Now, there's individuals who serve on their state society, they become president, a local society, they become president, they serve on the program committee, and then maybe they're a chair of one of the networks in NRPA, and then they see, hey, there's a NRPA board of directors. What's your story? What is your story? What are some, I guess, some service opportunities that led you to this, and why? I guess that's a kind of a weird question, but why join the NRPA board of directors?
Good.
Not like they're paying you, right?
No, unless I missed my check. Wait, what?
Well, I'm just saying, you're going to tell them why. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not paying you.
I wish. So I would say a good question, Tom, because I'm a big advocate for involvement. Get involved. Jay and Shane have both served on the conference program committee with me for umpteen years. Some have left and come back, and probably coming back again. But this is actually my last year on it. But I will tell you, is understanding all of the committees that are out there and serve on them, because I will tell you, up until we did some different marketing in the last 2 years, but prior to that, we would actually have to call people back from previous years because we were not getting enough people who were submitting to serve on the program committee. And so when you serve on a program committee, you are exposed to a whole lot of the conference being put together and the sessions and the different things that need to happen. Otherwise you don't, and it kind of gives you like a peek behind the curtain. And so serving on a program committee was something that I did. Well, I am doing until this year. The magazine committee is another one that happens, and it's really, we have a meeting once a year during the conference, and we talk about all of the trending things that are happening, topics we need to be taken in consideration, people we need to seek out for submitting, how we can make it better, what's feedback, and that kind of sets the tone for what the monthly.
People don't realize how far in advance that happens too.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I know for a while the Young Professional Network had worked with NRPA to have a
submission in there.
Emerging leaders.
Yeah, emerging leaders column, and it was like 6 months.
It was
you had
process.
to get that in that way ahead of time. So I think some people just think some of that stuff just comes together with the snap of a finger. There's a lot to it.
Yeah, that's a whole 2-3 hour meeting that we're having. Like, what is happening? What do we need to do? What's coming up?
Cool.
Is anybody aware of this? Can somebody, can you recommend? And so that's again another committee that again, you get to sit at tables with both professionals in the industry, but also, like you said, Shane, the outskirts of the organizations of folks
Yeah.
that support us in some kind of way that sits at the table. So I think that it's good exposure through that way. I would say the building and the maintaining of the relationships is you showing up, it's you meeting with folks, and just to touch a little bit and not to go too deep, because I think it is, if you looking for another topic to do, this is what you asked Shane, I think is a very good one about the one thing but the balance and boundaries of all of this, because when you get to conference, you are literally, I always say, this is not vacation. You go from 8 o'clock to 10
Yeah.
o'clock. And if you can get away, because they want you to come to all of the after hour
Yeah.
things.
Mhm.
And I have picked up on what Tom has said. And my goal a lot of times is to show up. And I kind of say, I'm going to walk through,
Yeah.
speak to people, and I'm going to beeline straight back out of here.
Mhm.
But through that beeline, you catch one or two people that you speak
Yeah.
to, and it becomes a whole conversation. Because I'm not a big room person. Peopling depletes me, and so when they're like, "Shonda, where you?" To my room. To my room. I'm not.
Mhm.
I need to get ready for tomorrow, or you guys are not gonna like who you meet
Yeah.
tomorrow. So let me regroup and then you still got to get back and check your emails and respond to craziness and
Yep.
all of that. So when you think of that, I will say the showing up has, people be like, hey, here go this invite, you should show up. And I'm like, oh, but I show up. And so I've met some really good people and had some very good one-on-one conversations along the way that put me in the position I would say to get exposed. And when, as we know in this, people are calling like, Shane, do you know such and such? Hey, Jay, what do you know about this person? And like wrapping it back around. And so I am excited to say that Jesus, who is the current chair, he has appointees and I was one of his appointees. So he
Oh,
reached out
awesome.
to me
That's awesome.
and spoke with me about it. And I'm like, okay, I would love that opportunity. So my long story, Tom, of
No,
I
how
think
that's good to
um
know too. And a lot of people don't know that, but and then the appointee piece, that's a very humbling. That goes
yes,
back to your message. I think it was rule number 3 is putting in the work, right? And then
yes,
obviously tying in with just showing up. But
yes.
that's impressive, and that's obviously it's something that you should feel that anybody would feel good about, that they're being sought out because of the work that they did.
when you talk about doing the work and making connections and how you were kind of referencing that, you were kind of talking about the program committee a little bit, where we can be in a room and we've got 800 submittals and we're talking. What was always interesting about the 30 people in that room that are representing the national program committee and what sessions do and don't get selected and what you get exposed to as a member is you could see pretty quickly of those 30 park and rec professionals in there who had been doing the work
Yes.
in their conferences at the national level, because sometimes a name would come across and people wouldn't know it, but you would know it or someone else would
Yes.
know it. And
And
you,
advocate for them.
and there'd be some people that were pretty quiet in that whole meeting, and I think some of it was new and some of it was maybe they were not starstruck, but just like, oh, I don't understand this process, because it's a pretty daunting process overall to go through what we do when we're on that program committee. But there are some people that you also could tell might have been out of their depth a little bit with the work they had put in previously to conference. And what was cool is they would see other people, new people. And then the next time you saw them at the next program committee, they were more active
Yes.
and they knew someone, they had recruited someone for this
Yes.
opening or this trend, and they could speak and articulate why they thought that person was there. And I think sometimes doing the work is not only good for you, but for the people around you that says, oh, shit, I gotta step my game up. It just kind of, the tide rises all the boats eventually.
I do agree, because I was going to say too, we've been very intentional about making sure we get at least 2 YPNs on the group,
I
and
love
2
that.
that we have right now. When I tell you I'm like, let's go. Like I'm
Is
excited to see what they
it
do, because they're involved
is that the board or on the committee, the
on the
program committee?
committee, on the program
Is
committee.
is Ashley one of them? Ashley Falcone?
Yes.
She's the best.
Former
Yes.
guest of ours.
Oh,
And
okay.
the other is Maria, who
And
is also
Maria.
a
Oh,
former guest.
awesome.
Former guest.
So wait a minute.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
I don't. I love them both, so I'm gonna leave it alone. I'm gonna carry on.
We got to mix it up, the newer professionals. I think
Mhm.
I'm absolved.
I think
If
if we was closing out the fourth season and we were like celebrating and you brought me on to be a part. Yeah, I'm trying to
Like
help
I
y'all. And
said,
y'all
this
still
may end
not.
us today. This may be our last episode today.
I don't want to hear that,
Well,
Shane.
Jay,
we
save us.
know you're so busy with all your other responsibilities. We're just looking out
So
for
busy.
you,
That's right.
which is actually my question. So you talk about the board of directors, you talk about CPC, you talk about the magazine committee. You have your hands tied in a lot of extracurricular involvement. How are you finding the time for all of that? Plus your day job, plus social life, plus just everything else that goes into day-to-day operations. Because I know you've also transitioned to this position, not super recently, but not too long ago. So how do you manage that as someone, as we talked earlier about like the people that want to grow and learn, that you have to take on all these other responsibilities kind of to get your feet wet sometimes, and how does Shonnda do that?
First of all, you assume that I have a social life.
it's
No, I am learning. I am
Yeah.
learning to say no more. And it's because I love to learn, I love to be involved. And so it's not a yes because I feel like I'm obligated, but it's a yes because I want to help with that. I want to make a difference. And so what I am realizing is in order to pick up something, I have to drop something off. I got off of a board recently that I was serving in an executive manner in order to do the NRPA board, but I also gave them three people to put on the board to replace me. Like I have three people here, they're interested, take those folks. And so I'm trying to move people also into other
She didn't put us
positions.
in there though. She didn't put our names in.
You're
This is
not
where
in
we fight
Mobile.
back.
You're
This
not
is
in
where we
Mobile.
fight
If you
back,
was in
fellas.
Mobile, you would be on it. You're not in Mobile. Um, so it is getting other folks involved and trying to I don't have a good answer for that, Jay. And it's unfortunate. I am doing better at trying to balance out what that starts to look like. And so some of the things like I said, this year I took on the NRPA board also knowing that this will be my last year. So I can't even reapply again for the program committee. And you two sitting on here, Tom, I don't know if you put your application in, but the application is out now. But it is reading those 800, or so.
Yeah.
It is it's a task, and so
that's
it's not
work.
something that is a small thing to do. And and we fight and love each other, but we fight about those sessions to get down to
We do.
180. But again, like I said, we build those relationships that way. So I'm getting off of that, which allows me a little bit more brain space. So I am having to learn how to drop and pick up things accordingly. But like I said, I think that it's all of our issues because we are type A, Enneagram 8, uh, all of that stuff of like managing. So we all probably struggle with that.
But I think we do, and I really can relate to what you said earlier of trying to learn to say no a little bit more or more strategically. We've had some of the younger professional guests on here, and a lot of the lesson I think from us too, and I don't know if you would agree, Shonda, was say yes. That was early in the career. Say
Yes,
yes. Put yourself
yes,
in positions and uncomfortable positions, and just say yes. Dive in.
yes.
As I've gotten to this point in my career, not only just where I am in my career, but I'm south of 40. I'm sorry, north of 40. I wish I was
Look at
south of 40
that.
still. North of 40.
He's a national presenter,
I still
though.
feel like I'm
National.
39. So I'm north of 40. I've got a 3-year-old and an almost 5-year-old.
Ugh.
And so saying no now is it's a
You have two kids?
reality. I do. I have two. Amelia's birthday just happened. Yeah,
Hey,
yeah,
look at
yeah,
that.
yeah. So I agree with you. It's almost at a you get to a point where you do have to try to balance saying no, and it's not about because you don't want to help, right? That's
Yes.
actually all the urge that you're trying to fight when people are asking you, but it's capacity. You put in the work, you built the relationships, and at this point there are times where you got to do it.
Yeah, actually, the video that Shane sent me about the three topics was, and I was like, these are really good. And I was like, he didn't made me pick up a whole nother podcast that I didn't need, but he said that, and I was like, that is true. You start off with the
Yeah.
yeses,
Ron
don't
Holiday
turn
says
anything
yes to
down,
everything and
say
doesn't say
yes,
no.
and then until you get to the point where you start saying no because you've like made it there. And I always say this saying that my grandmother used to say is, "May the work I've done speak for me," and it gets to that point,
Mm.
but that when your work have spoken for you you're a little bit more intentional about the things you want to be a part of. It's like who's there, who else is on that,
Yeah.
who's a part of that, and there's some, like I'm okay, and there's
Yeah.
something I'm like Shane, okay.
That's funny. When Shane asked us to be a part of the podcast, I was like, Shane, I'm not so
Yeah.
sure about that.
Was not interested in that. It's interesting. Before we get to rapid fire, which we're fixing to kick off, we talk about balance a lot, and I think that's a misnomer. And I think we've tried to talk about it, but I think something you said, Shonda, that made it a little bit more clear to me. It's not one for one. It's not one for the city and one for me and my family. That is what the term balance feels like, but that's not what balance looks like. It is potentially you miss three. You're gone 3 weekends in a row for work events, and so you pull one back for you. But it's not. I will give the city. I'll give my agency. I'll give my community two, but then I'm taking two. I will give half a year to you, and then I get half a year to myself. Or I work 8 to 5. I get the next 8 hours me. That's just not. That is
Right.
quote what the word balance would probably say in some sort of dictionary. That's not what
Yes.
work-life balance looks like. It's not
No.
one for one. It's sometimes 10 for one. I think all we're
Yes.
trying to say is get the one.
Yes, know when to sit down.
Right. Just take there. It could be 12 for one. And the next time it could be one for a while. And then it becomes 10 for one again. If you're an event planner, they probably really feel that, right? Like in event season, it's feast or famine. And we've had people on that, like Lindsay with the Indy 500, there's a time where she probably works 80 hours a week and doesn't get any time for her family. And then there's, I don't know, 3 weeks, 3 months after the Indy 500, she might have 80 weeks where she doesn't work, but it's not one for one. It's take
Correct.
time when you get a moment. Sometimes it's 10 for the agency and 2 for you. We're just trying to say, make sure you take your 2 when you get a chance. So rapid fire is up next, and it's a fun opportunity just to get to know you a little bit better. And we're just going to pepper you with some questions, and they never
Be
as quick as
nice.
they are. Yeah. But my favorite town and my wife's favorite town is New Orleans. We love it. I sometimes wish it wasn't the sweatiest, hottest location every time I go there. I always say if New Orleans was anywhere north of where it was at, it would be the New York of its era. Like there are some people that love New Orleans, but like, oh, it's hot. Oh, it's muggy. Oh, it's just so humid. I can't take it, And so, but the town itself is some town that all three of us
the
love.
time that you want to go.
That's where we got to go. October.
That's your sweet spot. October, November.
That's when NRPA goes there, when they do actually go as well.
October, November is your sweet spot.
'Cause I don't remember it being too hot when we were there for NRPA.
Yeah, that's about the only time you can go.
It's coming back. You know that.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about if you were to take us on a tour of New Orleans, your favorite spots, where to eat, where to go, where to hang out, what would it be and why?
So first of all, you're gonna get me in trouble because I'm in Mobile. So if any
I
of
know.
my staff sees
know.
this, they're gonna be like, "Why are you talking about New Orleans?"
We've already given Mobile the credit with the Mardi Gras.
Okay. And I'm gonna say it again.
We're not gonna say New Orleans perfected it.
Shane, you're running out. See. My favorite place in New Orleans.
Yeah. Magazine Street.
I absolutely love Magazine Street. It's all the shops. It's all, really good restaurants. The other place is the name.
While you're thinking, there is an atmosphere, a spirit about New Orleans that I just have never felt in any other city. It's alive. 3 a.m., 3 p.m. It is alive.
And there's always something to do if you are looking for something to do.
And you can go to Las Vegas and feel like it's alive, but it's manufactured in some way. It doesn't feel
natural.
Right. But New Orleans, it's alive. It's human as it can be.
Yes.
There's something about the energy of that town.
Whenever I go, the thing that it just makes me close my eyes is when I hear somebody say, "Hey, my baby." That is like and it's true. It is sincere, and it's funny when we did customer service. Folks were saying like you can't say that because, and I was like, That's not gonna work here in New Orleans. Y'all can find something
Yeah.
else because that's what they go. Hey, my baby, how you doing, baby, sweetie? You need something, and it's
Hmm.
just so sincere, and so that's just like your grandmother grabbing you and hugging you. So let me think, what else?
Is there a
It's hard.
restaurant?
I eat everywhere. Every time I go, honestly, it seems like there's new restaurants opening. So the
Mm.
goal is every time I go to New Orleans, I have a whole section in my Instagram that I'm like following of like list of places to go eat and try.
And New
So I
Orleans
keep
known
it.
for being a great food place, but is there something really
Yes.
cool about New Orleans not food place oriented? A museum or something that you would recommend?
There's a bar called Chase Della Chase that is not too far from Tulane. It's in a small little community and it's a wine bar.
Hmm.
And they have the truffle fries that you have to get with the aioli sauce and your wine.
Awesome.
So that's usually a place
I'm
that
in.
we go sit and hang out. Not a lot of folks there. It's in a college space, but with no college students there because it's too refined for them. So they're at the bar 3 blocks up.
My wife's our editor and she's taking notes. In fact, Max's episode that just released, some of the burger places, the food places he's
Oh
mentioned, she
yeah.
has visited this week already with
Oh, so she's
her
going to them.
sisters. Yeah, so I'm sure this Chase Della
Jealous.
Chase will visit at some point.
Yes. I'm gonna have to send you a list of places.
All
Don't
right.
Love
get me
Well,
cut me off. I'm not ready.
it.
let's give mobile their
They're
due
due.
credit. All right. So, uh, what are we eating in mobile?
Mobile, they gonna jump on
Mobile.
you, Tom. They
You
gonna
get
Sorry.
in
jump on
trouble.
you.
New
So,
Yorker,
Mobile.
carpetbagger.
I know. Gosh, can't speak up here.
Places that you have to go eat here. My favorite place is Mama's.
Okay.
Mama's is a place that's downtown that is like home cooked. They have set meals every day, but because they have set meals every day, you can go in there and get you a meal and eat and be out in 30 minutes.
Mm,
So they got the meatloaf and the fried chicken and the pork chops and all that stuff that you're not supposed to eat in the middle of the day because you're trying to go back to work, but
right.
it's good.
Well, for the record, when we were in Vegas, we ate at Mr. Mama's several
Yeah.
times for breakfast. So I wonder if there's any sort of correlation there.
Probably not because this is
Heart
like a real
disease.
mama about that.
I figured
Good
it's not,
food,
but
good food.
it's probably the only conference that I would say we've gone to somewhere to eat and we went back like the next day to the same restaurant because I like
That's
typically
good.
we try to go to different places.
That's good. Yeah,
Mr.
I would say
Mamas.
Mama's. I go to Noble South, Roy Thai. They got a duck pho that I absolutely love. When I walk in the door, they already know to get it ready because
Hmm.
that's what I'm ordering. And I order it. The owner comes out because he knows I'm there because I'm probably the only person who orders that during the lunchtime because that is what, yeah,
You're getting it every time. Mm,
getting it every time. Dolphins is one of a restaurant in one of our largest building, and it gives you the whole picture of the whole like Mobile Bay and all of that view, and so it's really pretty. So usually when people come in town, you take them there so that they can see that view. So it's a nice place as well.
Well, outside of food, what else would we be doing there? Like just to experience everything in the region. What else would be not necessarily a touristy thing, but is
Hmm.
there like a place to go that's, a different park or hiking or something else that you'd want to show off for the region?
Parks and Rec related, it's not open, but I would still want to take folks to it. Although we're at the water, we don't have access space. Our port here takes up a good portion of that, and our port is, I think, it's one of the top 10 ports in the country right now, and it's growing
Okay.
with its access. And so we're trying to get access to water. So we probably about 2 years ago got access to 150 acres right off the water, and so we're trying to build that up. But it's a beautiful raw space, and I love when parks people come here to take them there because then you all have a different view, so you're like sharing all this other stuff that you think we should do. So I love doing that. We have our Langen Park, which is one of our big regional parks that we have, that's really pretty. But in that same footprint, we have a botanical gardens. We have our tennis courts that we have one of with 60 tennis courts in one location there that we host a lot of UST tournaments. And then we have our golf course. So all of that is right in that area. So it's a little ecosystem of its own. What else?
Well, my wife, I'm not going to get into our travel habits now, but the guys know that when we were really traveling around different places, pre-kids, our passion was we would go to Charleston, we went to Savannah, New Orleans because of the beautiful history of the
Yes.
architecture. Is
Yes.
that similar where you're at? Is it?
Yes. In some parts of it, that's what I say too. We have oak trees as our love and almost despise, I'm gonna say, as in the urban forestry world. But I mean, we have streets of just lined oaks, and so we are
Beautiful.
our architectural structure is very similar to that of New Orleans and some of the Savannah areas. So yes, it is there as well.
So, next question for me. If you were talking to young, straight out of Long Beach University, Shonnda, what advice would you give her?
Mm, listen, listen. Yeah, a lot of times you come out, you think you know everything.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It helps to pause and listen, take in the information. And I would say, and leaves, I would have left sooner.
Left
Again,
Long Beach?
yes,
Were you from that area?
yes.
Okay. So you were a
So that,
California girl that
yeah,
became a
that was my
Southern
home,
Texas girl. Gotcha. Or Southern,
Southern Louisiana.
there we go.
Yeah, but prior to that, I was in Miami for 5 years.
Oh,
Okay.
that's right. You had Miami-Dade
Yeah,
County on your,
yeah,
you've
yeah.
worked for some big agencies.
So the movement kind of just, I think it made me, I don't think I know, it made me more aware and culturally aware. Because I would say going to Miami was kind of like a culture shock for me. So it's when you live in all these different places and you get to meet different people and how they navigate and how cities function and how organizations function, it makes you more aware as you move up and move around.
It's interesting. I listed Miami. We had Barbie Hernandez on, who at the time was a
Mm-hmm.
former Parks and Rec director for Miami, and now is with the
She's city manager, isn't she?
city management. And now
Hmm.
she's back. She was in Doral. Now she's back over in Miami, right? She assists city manager
Yes,
in
I think
Miami.
yes.
I had said Miami's that town that always. It's a town I'm always intrigued by, but I never thought I would live there or whatever. What was it? What was it like living in that part of the world? Because it's totally different than Southern California, I'd imagine.
Yes, I laughed because when I moved to Miami, I kept saying, I thought this was the South. And they was like, no, you hit the bottom. Like you came past Orlando and you dropped to the bottom and you was not paying attention. Because I was like, it is like living on an island. When you are in Miami, you feel like you are in all of the places.
It's got an energy
Dominican,
about it too, though, doesn't it?
Dominican,
Yeah.
Haiti, Puerto Rico, you feel like you are in all of those places at once there. So the culture is rich. But because of the weather, it's so nice. The parks, the beaches are highly used, and I think I use them. I think the most just being there because the goal was to be outside. Where
Mhm.
else in December and January are you at the beach or at the park because the weather is so nice? And so when it got to 60 degrees, we had to hurry up and wear our boots, otherwise we wasn't gonna get another chance to do that. But Miami was really nice, especially at the age I was there. I had a great time. And good thing social media was not how it is today.
Yeah.
La,
Come back to
la,
haunt you.
Last one for me. You talked earlier about how Long Beach was undefeated. Now, I'm going to
Tom, you
ask you
about
a,
to be messy because Shane was being messy with that, but I'm gonna okay.
I'm gonna put a question to you first that would lead to the actual question. But are you a football fan, a college football fan, being in the South?
I feel like I am forced to be one.
Okay, and
Yeah.
that's fine. I'm just curious because I
You're
know you
fixing to get her in
have.
trouble if you're going to ask
That's
Auburn or
that's what
I'm
Alabama.
I
about to
don't.
see where he's about to
That's what
go with this.
I
I'm
don't
gonna
want to get
look.
you in trouble right now, but I
Okay,
understand the Louisiana
LSU.
roots,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, but
Mm-hmm.
you're in Alabama, but Alabama
Mm-hmm.
might be in a part of the state, as I understand from other individuals. And I actually was on a webinar with a lot of the individuals from your state association, and even though they were in Alabama, there's a section in there that's very LSU, correct?
Yes, it is.
So
Yes.
where are you? Where do you lie? Alabama
boy,
or
you did
LSU?
it. You did it. You're going to ask her.
My answer is I always want a good game. That's all I have to say. I don't because
That's a good answer.
what you hear around here is Roll Tide, War Eagle, and I don't even know what LSU said. I think it's just LSU. So it is.
Yeah.
I am usually trying to mediate the fight, not the person
Okay.
in the fight.
It's just a different world there, right?
It is.
For
It is.
college football.
It is. It is die hard. It is a whole. It's funny because Tom O'Rourke, we did something and we went to Clemson, and I got to tour their facilities, and I came back with a Clemson shirt. I thought they was gonna drag me. I was like, wait a minute, because I was like, let me tell you what Clemson. They was like, have you been to Alabama? I was like, I have not. They was like, well, I said, well, I didn't get an invitation from Alabama to go there.
That's
so
right.
I am learning to be mindful.
Thanks so much for the time. This has been a lot of fun. It went really quick.
Thank you. I did. I agree. I'm gonna say it again before I close out. That conversation you guys was talking about for balance may need to be a topic of something you guys pick up because you
Yeah,
hit
we're
on
gonna
a
have
lot
to.
of key things, especially because I think Parks and Rec people are extroverts and all of that. But again, everybody needs a balance of time to like regroup, and they just want, as Jay said, they want you to be on all the time. But yeah, it's a
I
lot.
remember I was in Missouri
Yeah.
City and it was a new employee orientation. And I was really quiet. I just got hired rec superintendent, and the public works guy that was next to me was like, I thought Parks and Rec people were fun. I was like, we're not clowns. We're not
I love that.
walk
Yes,
around
thank
with the
you,
red
Shane.
nose, like,
Yes.
yeah, we're going to be quiet sometimes too. And so,
Yes,
yeah,
that's
you're
like
right.
I
I
got it.
think
Yeah.
we
I
get
got assigned
projected
to
to be
drive the
something.
van. And I was like, why am I driving the van? It was like, because don't Parks and Rec people drive the I said, certain people, I don't drive vans.
That's
So
right.
it's so funny. It's like a whole
Oh,
thing
yeah.
of like what they think Parks and
Yeah.
Rec people do. So
Typecast. It's the easiest job in the world, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
It's always just goofing around all day. Shonda, thanks so much. This has been great.
Yes, thank you.
Shonnda,
thank
so good to see you.
y'all.
For the
I'm
record,
glad.
if we had known each other better, I wouldn't have waited till season 4. So these guys,
Ooh, we Tom.
Man,
What a load of
trying to get on your
garbage.
sweet side over here.
Okay, because I'm okay with being last. I'm used. Yeah.
Any chance I can get these guys in trouble, I'm gonna take.
I'm telling you, she came at me from the second I brought her into this room. I was here.
So
All right, John, be good.
All right, yeah, it
Y'all
was a pleasure.
good. Have a good great
Thanks.
weekend.
You too.
Bye.
Yes, ma'am.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Thank you.
It's fun.
I should have said that we'd have brought her on quicker if she knew how to operate her technology.
Well, she listens to this, she'll hear
Yeah,
it.
definitely was a long pause there that we got to edit.
Hannah will kill it. But that was great.
awesome.
Shonda is someone that I enjoyed all of our interactions on the program committee. I've had great respect for her.
Yeah.
Excited to see that she was on the board. And I think she is someone that speaks her mind, but she also speaks with grace about it and is always very classy in how she presents not only her side of something, but understanding that you have a side of something as well. And she's trying to get to that middle ground. And I really appreciated that when I was on the program committee with her. Did she chair the program committee at all?
Yeah.
Didn't she? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I know you guys have said this before, and I'm sure I have too. I enjoy obviously the episodes when all three of us know the individuals really well, but this was one of those where I didn't know Shonda as well, and I love those episodes equally as much, right? You just get to know someone. It's the special part about this podcast is it's a real conversation, kind of like Shonda said. You're at a conference and you get to have those one-on-ones, but it happens that one time a year, right? And this is that's been one of the gifts that we've been given through this podcast.
That's right. Our hack is that we get to have that once a year, once a week.
That's right.
Yeah, it's been
Absolutely.
awesome. All right, fellas. Until
Cool.
next time.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Bye, everyone.
Follow RecLess Podcast on YouTube for more content and outtakes. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow along on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn for news and exclusive clips. RecLess Podcast is edited and produced by Hannah Mize. Thanks for listening. See you next time.